Ved Pradhamantra. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Excuse me. So we are doing Purusha Sukta, and today we will have a discussion on mantra number 6. Yat Purushena Havisa Deva Yagyam Atanvata Vasanto Asya Asit Ajyam Grisma Idma Sharathavihi. This describes how God sacrificed himself to himself in the fire of himself. Now, before we explain this, we need to know some very basic things about Yajna. We have been discussing, those of you who have been following our talks would know by now that mind in Indian traditions is considered to be finite. It has the faculties of knowing, understanding, etc. But it's not as infinite as Atman. And every system of philosophy has given sound reasoning and sound arguments why mind is not Atman. Number two, why mind is finite. So, in spite of all the talk of formless and God being infinite, etc., etc., ultimately, when you look at God, you will be looking at a finite form and God with qualities. Because mind is intervening. God may be infinite, but you are looking at that infinite through your finite mind. So naturally, God will have qualities and God will have form, etc., etc. And the moment you have God, who appears practically like us, and that's why you will find that whenever there is this concept of personal God in any religion, that God resembles us. Just that their power is of all knowing, all powerful, etc. However, in every other sense, he resembles us. He may even get angry, he may even get jealous, etc. in some religions. Now, the moment you have this very clear idea about God there, me here, and the idea that I want to get connected with that God, what is the best way to connect? Those who do not believe in God, those who do not want to believe in religion, let's not discuss them. That's a different issue altogether. Here we are discussing of people who have devotion towards God and who want to stay connected with God. One common practice that you'll find all over the world is to pray to God. And from there, you might have noticed how even children pray to God and how in different religions kids are taught to pray to God for fulfilling their desires, etc. And as you grow up, you realize how childish it all has been. And you will also realize that whatever that might be, it cannot be higher religion. Second is get involved in a process that will involve every faculty of yours. That means body, limbs, mind, all the senses, etc. So ritualistic prayers, for example, those of you who have visited a temple and where you might have met someone who is some priest who is truly devoted to the deity of the temple. And if you ever get a chance when they are performing the worship, if you have even the slightest of sensitivity, You will be charmed. You will just be charmed by the love that oozes out of such prayer, such worship, and those rituals. So, what I feel personally, what I feel that if at all we have to worship God, if at all we have to feel the connect between me and God, if we are not deep into meditating upon Him or performing japam, that is the mantra that you got from Guru and doing it in thousands, the best thing would be to perform a ritual in which you are totally involved. And that's what the Vedic sages realized, and they came up with the idea of yajna. Now, the scholars say that earlier it was yajna, and later on it converted into idol worship, murti puja, vigraha puja, etc., as you find Hindus performing all over the world. But that's an academic question. As far as method of worship is concerned, anytime I'll say that yajna, yajna is a far better option. What happens in yajna is that you light a fire, and that fire has to be lit at particular hours. And before those particular hours, you have to prepare yourself. Take bath, put on fresh clothes, make certain preparations, and chant the mantras, pour oblations. It's a huge thing. Now, if you go back to the Vedic times, 8,000, 10,000 years ago, who knows? Because date, etc., can be given only by the scholars, that is, historians. So there was kind of super abundance of yajnas, and these yajnas, they demanded lots of things. They demanded the attention of the priests. They demanded the attention of the performer, of the yajman. Yajman means people who get some yajnas performed by the priests. And there was a need for lots of items. That means fire was needed, so firewood would be needed, and that firewood has to be of a particular kind, from particular kind of wood, and ghee would be needed to pour into that fire so that the fire stays ablaze, etc. If you have ever chanced a home being performed, and I'll suggest if you are interested, during Durga Puja, if you are watching on this Belur site, I mean, those things must be there on that YouTube channel. Home is performed, and I think it is shown there. Now, if you come and physically watch that home being performed, now me being a monk, I've naturally seen it 100 times. You get totally absorbed in it, totally involved in it. And when I was young, I was one of those persons who was interested with the responsibility of organizing the home. So I've seen it really from very close quarters. You get totally involved in it, much more than the ritualistic puja, much more. And prayers, etc., stand no chance before these yajna. So these sages, they laid a lot of emphasis on yajna. So much so that the later generation started telling that anything could be got from yajna. You want a son, perform a yajna. You want a kingdom, perform a yajna. You got a kingdom, perform yajna. You want your enemy to be destroyed, perform yajna. And in Purusha Suktam, which probably is one of the later hymns, it is, the possibility of its being an early hymn is remote, as we will see. So we find that creation itself is seen as an act of yajna. But it's creation. Those of you who have listened to our Dasariya Sukta talks would remember that when creation took place, there was nothing. There was God, but there was no one else to look at him. So you cannot say that something existed or something did not exist. Now, if God alone existed and creation is an act of yajna, that is, creation came out of yajna, then how was that yajna performed? This hymn beautifully says that God Himself performed that yajna, but there was nothing. So God sacrificed Himself. Oh, such an unusual thing. Normally, yajnas are performed towards some God with a small g or maybe capital G. But in this case, God Himself sacrificed. To whom? To Himself. Where? In the fire. That was He Himself. And that's how the whole of creation came up. Creation, with all its varieties, with its beings and animals and birds and trees and seasons, everything. This act of sacrifice is being described in the next verses. Yat Purusena Havisha Deva Yagyam Athanvata Vasanto Asya Asit Ajyam Grishma Idma Sharat Havihi. Those of you who might have studied Mahabharata, you will see that this yajna, the process of yajna, the ingredients used in yajna, etc., are often used as metaphor for certain things. Even at times, war, war is equated with yajna. This is yat purusena havisha. So when the gods here, the term has come gods, G. We will explain why. Small g. When the gods perform the yajna with Purusha as their offering. Now, Purush, God, capital G, He Himself is being sacrificed. God is being sacrificed. But you need fire. You need ghee. So the spring season became its ghee. The summer is fuel. In the autumn, it's oblations. Such beautiful imagination. Since the sages saw everything as an act of yajna, even the relations between a husband and wife, and the acts they performed, seen as yajna. If you listen to our talks on Gita, the fourth chapter, everything is seen as yajna, including your breathing, etc. So naturally, creation has to be yajna. And the activity that goes on in the universe has been beautifully described in Gita in the third chapter as a yajna. But there was nothing else other than Purusa. So, Yat Purusena Havisa, God sacrificed Himself. God sacrificed Himself how? Into the creative fires. And Yagyam Atanvata. The Yagya was performed how? By the Deva. Now, Deva, although it's translated as the gods, the term Deva has many meaning in the Veda and in later traditions. Deva also means senses. In Upanishads also, the term Deva implies senses. One reason is that our senses are actually controlled by the presiding deities. So these are considered to be practically one. So Deva, if you go etymologically, if you take help of Sanskrit grammar, it comes from Devadhatu, which means lighted. Because the senses light up the objects and the gods stay lit up in the knowledge of Atman, the term Deva is used. So, senses of God. Now, God is being seen here as Purusha, some kind of being. So, naturally, he will have senses. These are imagination minded. Don't take it literally. So, the senses offer God in the fire of God. But according to certain interpretations, as you'll find in Veda Vihangam book, we have mentioned that creation is a cyclic process. And because creation is a cyclic process, whatever was there in the earlier cycle is present in the cycle that is being created. So the moment the idea comes that let there be creation, the first beings like the gods and the highest class of sages, they appear automatically. These are the people, these are the beings, highest beings. They do not get liberated. They are always there for the welfare of the universe. So they are the first beings to be born. So they were there. But in either case, whether they were the gods with a small g or they were Purusha himself, the one to be sacrificed was God himself. That is something unusual. You won't find this concept anywhere in any religion. Since yajna requires lots of things, how was the yajna performed? Vasanto asya asit ajyam. This spring season, because of its beautiful climate, is compared to ghee. In summer, because of heats, is compared to shrill. Autumn, the oblations. Spring, they say that spring brightens creation and ghee brightens fire. The summer acted as, why summer? Because Palash tree, those of you might have ever visited areas where there are Palash trees. The flowers are, red like fire. And Palash wood is often used during sacrifices. So, summer acted as twigs of Palash because they are known as flames of the forest. When the flowers bloom, Palash flowers, you'll feel as if the entire forest is on fire. So, it was fed to the fire to brighten it up. Autumn has brilliant hues. So it is being offered as oblations. Just to remind you, these are just imageries. These are just pure imagination to put in our mind that time has started rolling on. Time and creation are interlinked. Whenever there is creation, there is time. If there is time, there is creation. And time is marked by seasons, change of season, change of day. Instead of using day and night, obviously, they have used season, which is longer in duration. That's very, very important thing. What really this verse means to say is that time has started rolling on, and to, to give honor to time, the seasons are being seen as the essential elements of Yajna. And even when you see all these elements separately, these were created from Purusha. They did not exist independent of Purusha. That's not possible. Essentially, it means that Purusha is the underlying factor and force behind this creation. There is nothing outside God. There is nothing. You just cannot think of anything that is outside God, good, bad, whatever. Everything is God. How was this yajna performed? You see, they go in detail. Things we know well, we go in detail. If you ask your kids, those who go to school, how was the class? They will not be able to give you the detail because they are not interested into it. But how was the game? They will give you the detail because they understand that game very well. If there was some kind of mischief, they understand it so well that they will describe it in detail. Tam yagyam barhishi prokshan purusam jatam agratah tena deva ayajanta sadhya rishayascha ye. In that yajna, these devas, see them as gods. They first sprinkled and purified water on Purusha. Sprinkled, purifying water on Purusha. When animal sacrifice is made, see nowadays there is a lot of hue and cry against meat eating, etc. But in the Vedas, animal sacrifice was a pretty common thing. And forget animal sacrifice. Here, God Himself is being sacrificed. Now, before you perform such sacrifice, those of you who have visited any of these temples where goat is sacrificed, you'll see that the goat is sprinkled with purifying water. Goat is first purified. Then certain mantras are offered. The idea being that the jiva, the soul that is inside this goat, may get liberated from this goat body and may have a better body in the next birth. So that means there would be some kind of evolutionary push. Now you can go on arguing that it's all nonsense and you are just trying to make up, etc., etc. That's of no use because try howsoever you may. Those who eat meat, they will continue eating meat. Some of them will become vegetarians and some vegetarians will become non-vegetarian. Ultimately, these things can never change. What is happening here is that they say that, okay, fine, you can enjoy your meat, but it's always better to first offer it to God. At least there will be some kind of check and balance, some kind of restraint on you. The rest is your choice. And in Manusmriti, it's very clearly said that if meat is offered to God, it can be taken, otherwise, no. So those who are shouting and crying against meat eating, we have nothing to say. Well, this is what is Purusha Sukta saying. Very interesting thing about Purusuktam is people will keep on shouting against Purusuktam and the Vedas that the Shudras came out of the feet, but they will never talk about that God Himself was sacrificed as an animal, like an animal. This is just It's just a presentation to give you an idea that nothing is outside God. And taking certain things out of context, taking certain things literally, and taking things that suit you politically is an unfair thing, absolutely unfair thing. So they first sprinkle that purifying water. And Tena Deva Ayajanta Sadhya Rishiyasya. The gods, Sadhyas. Sadhyas are celestial beings, divine beings, who are considered to be even superior to the sages, to the rishis. And rishis thus conducted the sacrifice. How? First they caught hold of Purusha as the animal. They sprinkled purifying water on it. And now the sacrifice, the cutting of Purusha into different parts so that different things spring up and different lokas come out. So you may ask, if creation was not yet there, where from you have different lokas and place, even the place where this is being carried out? No, the whole thing is mental. The whole thing is being thought out. And this creation itself is a thought process of God. It's not outside God. It is inside God. If it is inside God, it cannot be something physical, the way we understand physical. For us, the mental world is different and the physical world is different. But for God, what is mental is physical. These things need a little understanding. If you just think, suddenly you will have this idea absolutely clear. So they say that the first of these sages, Sadyas, etc., who come in every cycle of creation, they proceeded with the process of this yajna. So Purusha was spread on the kusha grass. Kusha grass is a type of grass which is considered to be extremely sacred for the yajna. So this Purusha was spread like a goat, or maybe he was tied. One of these two things. There are different ways. Sacrificial, like a sacrificial lamb, and water was sprinkled. That's the explanation. Now, this word Barhishi, those of you who have this copy of Veda Vihangam with you, remember, they say that certain expressions in the Rig Veda that we have, like Virat, Varhis, Prakriti, they are all synonymous. So, actually, it may mean that it was the early stage of creation where Prakriti has started evolving, it might mean. So, Purusha was now cut up like a sacrificial lamb, the way a lamb is cut into pieces. Tasmat yagyat sarvuta sambritam prisat arjyam pashuntan chakre vayabhyan aranyan grhamyas chahiye. From that all sacrificing yajna, sarvahut. Why sarvahut? The ultimate of sacrifice, the creation itself is coming out of it. And Purusha, who was the soul of all, he was sacrificed. So it was through this yajna that the universe and all its beings was created. How? Pasuntan chakre vayabhyan aranyan grhamyaschaye. Animals and those of the air and village, different kinds of animals and birds, they were created. Tasmat yagyat sarvabhuta richa samani jaggire chandansi jaggire tasmat yajuh smat ajayat. From that sarvabhuta, richa, saman were born. These are the types of meters that are there in the Vedas. Now, commentators have said that this is the first time we have distinct mention of the four different types of meters that we have in Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajuḥ Veda, and Atharva. So, Richa is from Rig Veda, Sāma, and Jaggire, that is used in Yajuḥ Veda, Yajuḥ, and Chanda. Atharva Veda is known as Chanda. These things came out, and because we believe that creation came out of the Vedas, or the Vedas were the knowledge that was created with this creation. They are simultaneous. These were created. The important thing is that the knowledge that is there in this creation, this universe, it was earlier also there. And because it was also there, it came out spontaneously. It came out from God. And in later religious literature, you find that this idea of Vedas coming out of God, it has been beautifully explained. Sometimes they will say that it's like breath of God, etc., etc. Tasmat ashwa ajayanta yekecho ubhayadatah gavo ha jaggire tasmat jata ajavaya. Horses were born from that yajna, and animals with 2 rows of teeth. It's just an expression. Cows were born, goat, and sheep were born from that yajna. And that is even before the Brahmins, etc., were born. Says that if you have milk and you make yogurt, dahi out of it, dadhi, and churn, like those of you who have lived in villages who know this process. From that churning, butter is created and buttermilk is left, and like that. So here is Purusha, he is like that milk, and there is churning. And because of that manthan, that churning, different things come out. Later, we have this concept of manthan in Kshir Sagar Manthan. Not Kshir Sagar, it's Samudra Manthan, just Samudra Manthan. And we find different precious things coming out. First of it was halahal, the poison, and the last to come out was amrita. So it was through this sacrifice that all the animals, birds, etc. were born. Then they ask a question. There is a typical style in the Vedas. Sometimes questions are asked. Yat purusam vedu katidha kalpayan. Mukham kimasya ko bahu ka uru pada uchchete. Okay, when the gods divided Purusha, into how many parts did they shape him? What was his mouth, arms, and what were thighs and feet called? Now, then comes this is obvious, nothing to explain. And then comes the famous mantra number 12, which has been an exceptionally powerful political tool. And people have been criticizing. Somebody wrote me on YouTube that if you say that Brahmins came out from the feet of God, I'll come and bow down before you. The problem is these people know nothing. If only they knew the background, what exactly is being discussed. Not only that, if you go through the Vedas, you will come across such description of creation many times. And in every such description, what is coming out is different from what we have here. Essentially, these hymns want to say that whatever is there in this universe is God. First, it is from God, and then it is God. But no, they need to have they need to have some political tool to fight. And with the communists there has to be class struggle. And if there is class struggle, then there must be the classes that are fighting with each other. Although in India, Brahmins and Shudras and Brahmins and Kshatriyas, they never fought with each other like Catholics and Protestants or Shias and Sunnis. And yet, they will be blaming us for all these class divisions, etc. Surprisingly, if you look at things very carefully, you find that exclusiveness in any form is being rejected, is the other way around. For example, those who belong to Abrahamic religions and those who have some idea about Abrahamic religions would know that they are the chosen of God and they are not the chosen of God. There's a very clear division: chosen of God, not chosen of God. And those who are not chosen of God, for them, birth and seats are reserved in the hell, in the purgatory. Even today, you come across these fanatics who will go on telling that if you do not follow my way, your way will lead to eternal damnation, eternal hell. The Vedas do not talk anything like that. What it says that whatever you can think of, whatever you can think, if you think of cows and sheep and birds and horses, and as far as the type of work is concerned, Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Brahman, they are all from God. Why? Because nothing can exist outside pure consciousness. What is God? God is pure consciousness. God being pure consciousness, if you can imagine an idol made of sugar or chocolate, you cannot say that its head is superior and its feet are inferior. God is God. It's pure consciousness. The idea is to remove any sense of superiority, any sense of exclusiveness from our head. But politicians, they need some weapon, and they have used this weapon. And you will be surprised to see. Once I chanced to see one of the books where they have described Purusha Suktam, and the gentleman apparently is a very scholarly person, and he writes extremely apologetically what to say about this mantra. I mean, it's not a good mantra, etc., etc. Oh my God! The purpose of the mantra is to say that you cannot claim superiority. Now, simply saying that you have come out of mouth of God, so you are superior. No, it's not that. The idea is that whatever is there in the universe, whatever is from God, belongs to God, is God. Now, if Shudra is also God, because he's come out from feet of God, and Brahmin is also God, because he has come out of the mouth of God, how can you differentiate? Differentiation becomes absolutely clear when you talk about heaven and hell. Those following Abrahamic religions will say that if they are true to their religion, they will go to heaven and others will go to hell. Do you ever come across any such description in any of the Indian scriptures? No, you don't. If you are true to your profession, if you are following your Varnashram Dharma properly, then you go to the same heaven as anyone else. So I don't know why these politicians talk. They will keep telling that keep religion out of politics. But these politicians, they keep using religion for their ulterior motive. They attack our Vedas, they attack our Ramayana, and we have to keep quiet because we have said that we shouldn't be talking politics. But then why then politicians talk about religion? Why do they quote the Vedas? Very sad state of affairs, extremely sad state of affairs. So at least those who are listening, you should know what exactly they want to say. God is pure consciousness, and God Himself is being sacrificed. And from that sacrifice, everything is coming out. The animals are coming out, the men are coming out, beings are coming out. And as per profession, they say that there is no one outside God. It's not that somebody is shut out of God and somebody has the privilege of God. No. Brahmanasya mukhasid bahu rajanya krita urutadasya yadvaishya padbhyam shudru ajayata. With this background known, says Brahmana was the mouth, was and Rajanya, the Kshatriya, the term in the Vedas and even in the Upanishads, Rajanya, those who rule, was his two arms. Now, why two arms? Why not bring one? The thighs became the Vaishyas and the Shudras sprang from his feet. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, even if you make it the other way around, the idea will remain the same. Now you will say that, okay, change it. Okay, fine. You write the Vedas. You write the new Vedas. In that new Vedas, you say that Shudras came out from mouth and the Brahmins came out from feet. Nothing wrong with it. Does that make the entire thing logical the way the Vedas are? And if at all you are talking about profession, it's about knowledge being superior. The Brahmins, their job was one and only one, to preserve knowledge. The job of the Kshatriya was to protect people. Of course, these were the most important thing. As politicians of any country will admit, is the knowledge that takes them forward, is the protection. That's the most important thing. And to run these two things smoothly, you need money, you need wealth, and you need service sector. So identifying Shudra with a certain caste and certain varnas, that is not the purpose. What they say that whosoever is there in the society is a product of God. Finished. And God being conscious is pure consciousness, nothing else. So the idea of how this concept of Varna and Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, etc. came, we have discussed many times. So we are not going into that. Not only that, we have these gods, the famous gods like sun and moon coming out. Chandrama manusojata chakchos suryo ajayata. The moon was born from his mind. Sun was born from his two eyes. Now, if they're coming from two eyes, there should be two suns. No, it's just imagination. It's just trying to explain that whatever is there in the universe is from God. Mukhat indrascha agnischa pranat vayu rajayata. From his mouth were born Indra and Agni. Now see first, mouth, Brahmin was there, and now suddenly from mouth, Indra and Agni. And from his breath, Vayu was born. Nabhya asi at antariksham shishno dyo samavartata padvyam bhumir disha shrotra tatha lokan akalpayan. Now again, from the feet, this earth is coming out. From that same earth, it's mention of the Shudras, and now it is a mention of the earth. What does it mean to say? It simply means to say that whatever you see in the universe, matter, energy, consciousness, beings, birds, animals, creatures, anything, everything is from God and everything is form of God. So it's various aspects of space like antariksha. Antariksha is the intermediary space between earth and the heavens. Dew is the highest space. Bhumi, the physical space. Bhumi, it includes the whole of universe, the physical universe that we know. And then there is dik. Dik is the quarters. Quarters, you can say directions. So sometimes they say 4 directions and sometimes they say 10 directions, taking the angles also. And all the lokas, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, and the Pata Loka, etc., these were all created from that Purusha who was sacrificed, who was cut into pieces. At least be happy that you are product of that Purusha. God was cut into pieces and we are the product of that. We are God Himself. That's what is being said. Nothing less than that. And then 15th mantra says, Saptasya asan paridhaya tri sapta samidha kritha devayat agyam tanvana abadnan purusham pashum. So when this Purusha, God Himself, was bound and tied like the sacrificial lamb, there were 7 fencing sticks. That's the process used in the yajnas. They were set. And thrice 7 logs of fuel set. These are process of the yajna. When? It wasn't when the gods were celebrating this yajna. Actually, it's elaboration of how to visualize God in the form of yajna. Like those of you who have deep interest into studying spirituality, you know that very often in the Puranas and other places, they describe God as having done this, God having done that. Here, God is being described as yajna. In that yajna, like in every yajna, you require certain enclosures and the place where the oblations will be made and the things required, essentials for the yajna and the sacrificial lamb. The whole thing is being described, but at a universal level. Universal level because animals and birds and beings and the 4 varnas, everything is being considered. So he says, Sapta Asan. 7 fencing sticks. This is mental yajna because you have to remember that there was no physical space and so there was no physical enclosure as such. And 7 enclosures that talked about as 7 meters that are most common in the Vedas. I'll just read out. Gāyatrī is one of the meters, famous meters. Then there is Ushnik, Anustup, Brihati, Pankti, Trishtup, and Jagati. These 7 are considered to be the most famous meters of the Vedas. The idea is that the Veda, which later got diverged into the four Vedas. They are the blueprint of the entire universe. And it is now being concluded. Yagyena yagyam ayajanta devastani dharmani prathamani santi. Prathamani asan. Tehanaka mahimana sachanta yatra purve sadhya santi deva. This is mantra number 16, which says, with this sacrifice, the God sacrificed to him, because every sacrifice has to be made to God. So this sacrifice, in which God himself was sacrificed, was offered to God himself. It's very interesting because yajnas slowly transformed into worship, puja. Although we have been hearing about worship, ritualistic worship and puja, it was first time in the life of Sri Ramakrishna that we find Sri Ramakrishna worshipping himself. See, in this modern age of materialism, people think themselves to be gods, but that's a different thing. Here, once Sri Ramakrishna chanced to see a photograph of his, and he himself took flowers and put in front of that photograph. God worshipped himself. In Purusha Sukta, God sacrificed himself. That's how the creation came. Sri Ramakrishna worshipped himself for the welfare of the humanity. So with the sacrifice that God sacrificed to him, these were the earliest dharma. So yajna is the earliest dharma, and this particular yajna is the first yajna that lays out the template for the future yajnas. The mighty ones assembled in heaven where the ancient divinities and the sadhyas abide. And whenever there is yajna, people assemble to see how the yajna is being performed. And there were these great sages, because they were kind of born the moment God thought of let there be creation. They assembled there. So dharma, which means to hold, yajna, which created this entire universe and everything that you can think of in this universe, this was the earliest dharma. So this first rites of the dharma, the process of dharma, these were performed where in the highest heaven, where the gods were present, sages were present, and the sadhyas were present. And thus continued the tradition of yajna. So in spite of all the politicizing that we hear about a particular verse of this Purusha Suktam, the idea is that God alone exists. When seen as a yajna, creation as an act of yajna, God himself sacrificed himself to himself. That's the end of it. The next talk we will take up the first hymn of the Rig Veda, Agni Suktam. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om.